My name is Dante and this is Story Hub. So I'm the owner of a wonderful rescued macaw. She is a wonderful bird but has a lot of issues due to an abusive former home. I've had her for 3 years and since then haven't taken any vacations or trips away as it would be too disruptive for her. She distrusts everyone and is very reliant on her routine. I love her deeply and I'm happy to make sacrifices for her. They are permanent toddlers and very intelligent birds. I met my husband by the time his kids were older. My stepdaughter was 16 at the time. We married when she moved away for college. Nevertheless, I thought we'd manage to have a decent relationship. Until now. My stepdaughter is getting married in March, and naturally there's a lot of preparation involved. They're wanting a huge traditional wedding and she is stressed out of her mind. They live out of state, and she invited me recently to come visit her for a week to help make wedding plans and spend time with their 2 yo. I declined and she insisted on knowing why, acting very hurt, and I explained the parrot. Well, it all went downhill from there. She caused a massive fuss with her dad, saying she never got a mother figure and I never accepted her as my full-blood daughter, and this is the ultimate snub for a silly animal. That I'm cold and emotionless. I feel really hurt and I can tell he agrees with her even though he's refusing to take sides. But I don't see why I should be expected to take holiday time off work to babysit and bond all of a sudden, and I don't see how I'm a monster for this. Am I the idiot here? Edit. Context of our relationship. We don't usually talk at all and she hasn't visited home in 4 years. Edit 2. Beginning to think it was maybe a mistake posting this. Mostly because this is a real and nuanced situation and Reddit is no place for nuance. And maybe personal relationships shouldn't be judged in the context in the first place. But also because I should be more understanding and a bigger person regardless of who is or isn't an idiot. Life is too short to be butthurt and offended. I called my stepdaughter and told her that I understand this is a big moment in her life and she wants someone there to help and support her, and that I'm still willing to help her in any way I can to plan the wedding via Zoom and virtually. We talked a bit and I asked her why she hadn't accepted me reaching out in the past, and she apologized and said she didn't want to accept someone as a stand-in, fake replacement for her bio mom, but now she regrets it and would like a closer relationship, especially seeing how close her so is with his mom. We ended the conversation positively and I'm hoping things can improve going forward. I told her I'm a crazy bird lady and asked her if she still wants a relationship knowing that, and she said that after the wedding she's willing to travel to visit us if we have room. Which we do. I'll leave this post up but I'm happy either way and I'm glad the feedback here motivated me to make the call. You're an idiot. It's a freaking bird. Opus, what planet do you live on? This really shows that you do not care at all for your stepdaughter, and truthfully, if I was her, this would be the last I see of you. Just imagine if it was your biological daughter. I know you would not have the same tone about your precious bird. Not an idiot. Unless you know parrots in general, and how finicky they can be, especially abused ones. This isn't an animal you can simply drop off at a pet sitter. Opus could lose the previously abused bird's trust if the bird thinks Opus had abandoned them. Same time, you are already associating bonding as being a free babysitter. Also, a last-minute one at that. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Just sounded a little callous, but then again you are not obligated to be her babysitter. Not an idiot. I don't blame you. I'd normally say you are an idiot for putting a bird before family, but you've made it clear she's been pretty distant with you. The thing about relationships, all relationships, is they require effort and attention. Just because you're related, by blood or law, doesn't mean someone is entitled to your presence, especially if the relationship isn't exactly a good one. You aren't an idiot. I assume if your relationship were better, you'd make more of an effort. You're still going, so it isn't like you're skipping the wedding. NT. Macaws and parrots are not just birds like budgies where you can ask a pet sitter to feed and water them all week. Macaws are like gifted children who scream and can rip your fingers off. They are an 80-year commitment and often only bond to a single person. Birds in general are extremely sensitive to any environmental changes, so someone who doesn't know what they are doing can hurt or even kill the macaw. Shame on everyone for saying choosing an animal over family like it's a bad thing. The macaw seems more like family than her stepdaughter. If it was that big of a deal, then stepdaughter would help make accommodations rather than just want a babysitter. Now for the next story. Am I an idiot for telling my wife it was a mistake to stay at a baby shower? So my wife, female 26, and I, male 28, have been married for a year and began trying to conceive in September. No luck so far, but the doctor did say at our first appointment that it typically takes close to a year for most couples to conceive. She's been telling people that she's infertile, which isn't true. The doctor said she isn't. My wife and I went to my work Christmas party in mid-December, where my wife met my coworker's wife, let's call her Mary, and they took a liking to each other. Mary was pregnant and invited my wife to her baby shower, which was yesterday, and my wife sounded excited to go. I asked her when we were alone if she thinks she'll be fine. I know my wife and I know what typically bothers her. I knew she wouldn't bask in happiness over someone else's pregnancy, so I urged her to think it through. She said she's fine and she was excited, so she went. The baby shower was yesterday. About 40 minutes in, she calls me and asks me to come. I was at a cafe nearby because I knew she wouldn't stay long. I find her at the entrance of the house crying and a bunch of women consoling her. When she saw me, she came to me and pulled me to the garden to talk. She said she was dancing and looked at Mary's pregnant belly and couldn't take it anymore, started crying and ran out. All of Mary's friends followed her out to console her. I consoled her myself and said, okay, let's go babe. Where do you want to go? We can go for a drive so you can feel better. She looked at me weird and asked why she would leave. I asked why she would stay. She said she feels better now and can go have a good time. I sighed and said, babe, you know that's not going to happen. And I doubt the attention will be on Mary after this, and that's not great. It's her baby shower and she deserves to be celebrated. I can't see how people are going to shift their focus from consoling you to celebrating her if you're still there. She rolled her eyes at me and said she was going back in and that I could leave. 3 hours later, the party was nearing its end, so I went back to pick her up. My coworker and I stepped into the house, and lo and behold, everyone was sitting in a circle with my wife being the center of attention. Coworker looked for his wife and she wasn't there at all. He called her and she said she had left ages ago. My wife and I entered the car and I first asked her how she was feeling and we spoke about it for a few minutes. I then asked her what happened and why Mary left. She said, oh crap, Mary, I forgot to say bye to her. I told her Mary left ages ago. I then said, I know you're going through a hard time, but why on earth would you and her friends do this? If they consoled you for a few minutes, that's fine, but the entire party. We really should have left earlier. She looked at me so offended and said, are you Mary's husband or mine? We stared at each other for a while and just drove home in silence. I told her I wanted to talk to her this morning to sort things out, but she ignored me and left the house. Not an idiot. Your wife turned someone else's celebration into her own pity party, to the point that the guest of honor left her own shower and didn't realize she did anything wrong. Do you really want to have a child with a woman like that? Not an idiot. I don't really know where to start with this. Your wife sounds like a lot. You've only been trying to conceive since September. That's hardly any time at all. It's very unusual to get pregnant straight away. There is no evidence there's an issue, yet she's acting like she's having fertility issues, which is very attention-seeking behavior and pretty insensitive to people with real problems. Then she meets this woman just a few weeks ago, goes to her baby shower and completely ruins it and makes it all about herself. That's really horrible. Not an idiot. I don't blame her for the initial distress, but this could have all been avoided had she just left with you when you suggested it. I can't bring myself to understand why she stayed. And the fact that she didn't even realize Mary left. What a mess. I hope Mary has other friends and family she can host for celebrations going forward, because your wife and the friends who were in attendance are not really Mary's friends in my opinion. Now for the next story. Am I an idiot for telling my dad I owe him nothing and throwing his words back at him during an argument? I lost my mom to a long-term health issue when I was 10. The cost of treatment drained my parents' finances, and it was just dad and me after mom died. No extended family. Dad started dating when I was 12 and he met Jane. After a few months he told me her son had a form of brain cancer and was very sick, and that they were getting married and he would be helping to take care of her son. We went from 2 in a tiny 2-bedroom house to 4 in a tiny 2-bedroom house, and me sharing with a terminally ill toddler I didn't know. We had to make so many changes. No more takeout, which was a once-a-month treat before that. I had to stop my only extracurricular activity. No friends over because noise bothered him. No space that was just mine. No extra money for celebrating birthdays and Christmas. When I was 15, Dad and I got into a huge argument because I was never home, and was always saying no to helping Jane take care of her son. When I told him how much I hated the situation, he looked me in the eye and told me to grow up. He also told me that I was old enough to understand that life wasn't always easy or fun, and that a rougher life can build character. He told me we grew our family, which was a good thing. And one of the consequences of that sometimes is having less, but that it was worth it for the extra love. I told him that was bullshit. He told me I was not his whole life and he was not going to stop doing what he wanted to do because of me. Then he told me to never, ever say anything negative about his stepson because he was a kid and didn't need to know I resented him for being sick. After that talk I was even more distant and left when I was 17, right after graduation, and couch surfed until I went to college. I graduated high school at 17 and turned 18 that October. I didn't stay in touch. When I was 19 I heard that Dad's stepson had died. In college I met my wife and we got married this past June. Then in November my dad showed up and told me he wanted to talk. I shut the door in his face. He kept showing up where I was to talk. After getting annoyed with him I agreed to meet him for a coffee. He told me how he'd ended up divorced from Jane and how his stepson had died, and he looked disappointed when he learned I knew. He told me how he'd been struggling a lot and how he was hoping I could help him out. I laughed in his face and told him he had some nerves. He mentioned how he'd spent a lot of money on finding me and he wanted us to repair things, but he also needed my help. I told him no way. He became angry and told me he was my dad and was always there for me and I owed him. I told him I owe him nothing, and I threw most of his words back in his face, including that he needed to grow up and that he was not my whole life and would not stop me doing what I want. It became a bit of a scene. He told me at my age I should have grown more compassion. Am I an idiot? Not an idiot. Your dad sacrificed you so that he could frick. And as things turned out, the family he created wasn't all that real after all. He was just a patsy to help take care of a sick kid. You owe him nothing. Not an idiot. He was already struggling financially due to your mother's health issue. Decided to still date a woman and help taking care of her son despite knowing perfectly well that he didn't have the money to do that and take care of you at the same time. He basically didn't give a damn about you for years, and now that the child is dead and the mother finished sucking him dry, he suddenly remembered he has a son and came begging for money. If I were you, I would have closed the door on his face repeatedly until he understood the message. Not an idiot. Also, you're the idiot for calling Opus heartless because he resented a father for taking on a dying kid. You all forget that they were never in a financial position to do so. The father could barely afford to take care of Opus. I'm all for helping people. Hell, I give a lot of money to charity every year, but that shouldn't come at the expense of someone who you choose to bring into the world. If OP's father was in a good financial position, it makes all the sense in the world, but he wasn't.